I think you guys are bringing up a great point, though. Is like there's like people want to assign a narrative to it, but the whole point is this.
Right.
Okay, cool. Just take what they've done and let's go. We need to move on to what the next phase means. Because what are you gonna do? What are you gonna ask Xi Jinping? Hey man, that wasn't nice what you did. Like, why'd you Psyop us?
Just change the algorithms and then run it back through the 100 times more hardware. And then supposedly we'll be in a better position, right?
Can you stop doing the Psyop?
Is it more complicated than that? Yeah, exactly.
No, but
all right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got Jack Butcher, Bilal Zaidi Trung Phan. Boys, we're going deep on DeepSeek today. This is a DeepSeek episode. There's a lot of puns coming. We've been taking in all the feeds right now. What's going on?
You know what's so funny? Well, last week we talked about how our brains were melted from a Trump coin and TikTok. I'm like, man, can we just, it'd be amazing? Yeah. Maybe that'll be the craziest weekend we'll have for a while. And freaking DeepSeek comes on and just unbelievable, man. Jack,
been going in. Yeah, Jack, you've been all over this as well.
This is not as crazy for me as last week, but definitely crazy. I think like this bled out into the like wider technology circle. Wasn't quite on the level of like madness.
Trump coin mania.
Yeah. Meme coins
Melania
move
coin.
even faster.
Wait, hold on, but that's just in your corner of crypto Twitter, right? Like this. Well, we should talk about this.
I want to see your feeds.
Actually, no, I think Jack's right. Trump coin is universal. That's Trump, the most famous guy in the world. That's everything. That's tech.
It was
crypto,
also inauguration
finance,
week, right?
Inauguration, so yeah, Jack's
everyone's
right.
going on.
Well, you know what's funny? I think maybe that what this comes down to is like a 17% drawdown or 20% or whatever it ended up being in a like Fortune 500 company is like a biblical event in traditional finance, right? And
crypto world, that's like a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, like obviously this is like a very material amount of money, jobs, impact, like way more culturally relevant, but like you just numb when you're like looking at different things. And the Trump stuff was just like kind of reality shattering in a different way. Like this stuff is all very normal cycles of technology compared to like sitting presidents launching meme coins, which felt like an Overton window smash in a very different sense than like technical improvement of a AI model. Anyway,
yeah,
continue, boys.
But here's a question that does kind of bring up the question of what's actually going to make more of an impact. I know that sounds ridiculous because we're talking about presidential change and all the things that are happening with Trump, which to be fair, lots of things are changing very quickly already. So maybe I'm just trying to find an angle here, but realistically, just the impact this could potentially have in the longer term, if you think of like a fork in a road, this could be a massive change. And we even saw the waves of that. So, we talked about Trump coin. I'll tell you what looked like Trump coin this week was Nvidia stock, because that was falling off a cliff, 20%, 15-20%.
Dude, how in 600 billion market cap, as Jack noted, that's like, that's a lot of bags.
Very material.
How is that compared to like the whole stock market size of like certain countries? That must be bigger than
that's as large as like I think it's on par with like Germany or France. Just
that's what I was thinking,
itself, right? Yeah.
Well, what's the all-time high? The all-time high market cap of all of crypto is like 2.5-3 trillion, right? So it's like a material percent of that entire industry. Yeah. 25%.
Well, actually, I'll start with why I think. A main question before, like, let's just give the timeline here. We're going to talk about a little background on DeepSeek, why it blew up the markets over the weekend. Then we can do a winners and losers, like Bilal said, with the markets. We can just look again.
We're going to do bull case, bear case for probably Nvidia, OpenAI, and big tech.
Yeah, just big tech in general. And but what's interesting, something that you guys are discussing here is like the reason it blew up. It was like the perfect confluence of events because Andrej Karpathy, OpenAI co-founder, former head of AI at Tesla, had written about DeepSeek a month ago when they released. So the two main models that we're going to talk about here is V3, which is the Chat GPT competitor, and then R1, which is the O1 reasoning competitor. I don't know if you guys have played with the O1 model at OpenAI. But the difference with ChatGPT, for the listeners that haven't done it, is effectively the O1 model from OpenAI. That's the one where you send it like a question, like a really detailed one, and it spends like 5 minutes thinking.
And it like thinks,
Right. And it gets back to you, right? And And the whole point with the O1 was that was supposed to be bullish for Nvidia, because if it's thinking a lot, that means it's using a lot of tokens,
Needs
right?
more power. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, as we'll see, R1, this advance in primarily how they did the architecture, how they used the chips. That's kind of the main advance here. That scared a lot of people, because people like, I was trying to explain it to my buddy. He's like, listen, he's like, he works in property development. He's like, dude, what is going on with DeepSeek? And then I use like the worst analogy ever. I'm like, dude, imagine that you had to go build a shopping mall and you needed 100 you need 100 contractors and like 30 construction trucks. Now you can do that with 10 contractors and 3 construction trucks, right? It's like, there's positives. It's a lot cheaper, but
not for that original company
yeah.
that's
the contract
selling you the contract,
right? Yeah,
that's true.
So he's like,
so
okay.
Yeah, actually, Trung, that's a good place to start, because look, we've kind of fast forward, but let's maybe summarize, what actually happened, because by now probably people listening to this would have heard of DeepSeek and seen what's happening. It hit #1 in the App Store. But what's the kind of summary here for people who didn't really follow?
So
let
me ask you guys, because I think it'll help frame it, because the word gets thrown around now as normies, and what normie really just means is people that just aren't on AI Twitter 10 hours a day, right? It's just like people with real lives and jobs, right? So like it was really easy for me to grok and pick up what was going on and like try to make memes, which is the only reason why I read anything. So I just want to make memes, and so I want to ask you guys, when you guys started seeing DeepSeek blow up, was this the first time you'd heard of it over the weekend? And then what did you know about it, and what was your initial instincts? Is like, why is this a big deal? So why don't we ask Jack, and then we can go to Bilal on that exact question.
Go on, Jack.
I'd seen it, but it's not top of mind for me. Like I'm like interested in the AI conversation, but not to that level of detail with these like emergent models. And honestly, the level of technical proficiency to describe the differences is like over my head a lot of the time. So I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll wait till the product comes out and play with it. And I guess the one thing I would have taken away from this or has always been kind of true is like the sort of slicker the sales pitch, or the like more absurd the claims being made, it's like the hubris never fails, right? It's like the sign in the bra is one of the, I was going to tweet that the other day.
Jensen signing the bra.
Yeah, it was inevitable when you see that.
It's absolute classic situation. And like I've had like people text me like, are you buying like, should I buy Nvidia stock? And there's like, I don't know, maybe like early cycles of crypto, we had this degree of like permeation of culture around like developing industry, but it hasn't been for a while that it's been this. And this has way more quote unquote legitimacy, right? Because kind of like what we've talked about before, where you can just extrapolate the use cases out to anything. Larry Ellison's like, we're going to cure cancer with this. And people are like, oh yeah, that sounds reasonable. Like, yeah, it could do anything. It's AI, right? And what that, like the downstream effects of that, obviously other people are going to try and get in on that market, build a better version of the thing that you're building. And like these moats aren't as deep as people think they are. And ironically with this technology, it's like a moat erasing thing by design. Like the thing you're building consumes itself or empowers other people to make things that can like attack your market share. So it is different in that respect. There's a guy a guy that writes on crypto. I think I sent you guys this tweet. Good Alexander. We've sent a few of these tweets back and
great.
forth.
He was calling this last week.
He had a tweet on Friday. It was like, I can't believe the market hasn't priced this in yet, that like this model is, X amount cheaper and X amount more proficient than.
Well, he literally said,
O1.
I can't believe the market hasn't priced in a bunch of artists from China have created a better OpenAI product. And again, for listeners, I've been fumbling around. What does this model effectively mean? It's like they were producing the same outputs from this ChatGPT competitor and this O1 Reason competitor at ostensibly 1/30th of the cost, right? Like there's a number, and there's some more numbers we'll get into specifically. But let me jump to Bilal quickly. Bilal, what was your reaction over the weekend? You see this?
Yeah, I mean, basically what you said there was the summary to me as well. Just it seemed like it's things come out. I did probably see that. I remember seeing the name some time ago, probably from that original tweet that you mentioned before. But, you know, like Jack said, you're seeing a bunch of stuff launch every week. So that plus the crypto stuff, plus all the political stuff that's happening, you're seeing so much stuff all the time that new names, I'm like, okay, until it surfaces 7-8 times, I'm not going to necessarily like dig deep into it.
Tell us about what's the rule, Bilal? What's the rule of advertising?
Yeah, rule of 7. You normally
Explain.
need to see it 7 times to notice it. It's like an advertising rule, which I don't know if that still holds true. Jack, you probably heard of that in your world, I'm assuming too, right? Advertising.
Well, you just have to be exposed to something a certain number of times before you remember it, or you can recall
that was
it.
Like and there is probably something to that. I think maybe it's changed now with the way our minds are so impacted by all of the information coming in.
It's probably you got to be exposed like 1,000 times at this point, which is to your point, right? It's like every day there's a new AI drop 10 wild examples, right? You know what I'm saying? Every day it's the same.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like
Nvidia's dead. Oh, AI rappers
these takes
are dead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, we could make that. We're going to come to that in a minute, but there's obviously a lot more new. Nvidia is definitely not dead, and there's still a lot of things to verify. And also, you know, there's a difference between OpenAI and Nvidia in this case, in my opinion, as well. So, so that's kind of what I saw the summary, which was they've replicated what is costing so much money here in China for like 20, 30 times less. And also apparently open source, though I've also read both parts of that.
Well, the word is open. They're misused. They're open weights. They're showing you the difference is you don't actually know what the input data is. Probably because if we're being quite frank, a lot of it's just ganked. Like people say OpenAI stole. OpenAI took a lot of stuff from the internet that was allowed to take, and then kind of stuff they weren't allowed to take. And then the Naval had a tweet is like, oh, so the AI company scraped the other AI company that scraped the internet, right? It's like that's kind of the joke. And no, but a lot of the thing that you brought up, which is such a both of you guys brought up. So Jack, you had brought up that this had not really been on your radar, and when it did, it just, it wasn't like top of mind, right? And then Bilal, you had said,
like, I don't also have like personal exposure to this either, so it's like your brain doesn't go there.
There's no reason
like not
for
buying
for this to
Nvidia
be top of
stock.
mind. Yeah.
Right.
So and then
Jack,
Bilal's
if you have do you have any money in the bank, like S&P 500?
Oh yeah, but even that, like, even if Nvidia went to zero, like the way those instruments are constructed, it's like nowhere. Like by
it's not going to go down to zero. Yeah.
By design, you don't care, and that's kind of the beautiful thing about those.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, and you just go through enough of these things. It's like obviously Nvidia has a like multi-decade long advantage of producing these objects, and they just got more efficient overnight. Like maybe it's overvalued by a few percent in the short term. It's like how long is it going to take to build a true competitor to Nvidia is the real question beneath like how much of its value can be completely erased. And I think there's still
well here let's just add cheese the Nvidia section very quickly is like, well, actually, if this is a 10 times improvement on the efficiency of delivering AI queries, that just means more people are going to use AI, right? The running joke that over the weekend was Javon's paradox, which it's an economics term. You guys probably saw that, right? Like Satya Nadella tweeted it, but you can also tell that was like his Satya Nadella tweeting a Wikipedia article was like, he's just probably got a call from his CFO. Was like, bro, the aftermarkets are looking bad right now. You need to like reassure the markets.
Tran, could you explain what's Jevon's paradox? I had it in my notes.
Yeah, so the idea is basically like if the cost of a commodity, in this case intelligence, which we've been talking about for the past 2 years, goes down to zero, you don't use less of it, you use more of it, right? That's the example they always use, electricity. When the cost of electricity went from whatever it cost to create, let's say that the very early Edison days, it costed you $100 to turn on your light bulb, right? If that went down at $1, you're buying more light bulbs, right? It's like the whole point is you're using more of it. And you guys actually shared something from Signal, great Twitter account, former OpenAI, I believe, researcher. But the whole point he's making is like people aren't even like thinking about what it means if intelligence truly goes down to zero, because a problem with the AI stuff that we've talked about here was Bilal's former employer, Google. They are the epitome of this the software model for the past 20, 30 years, where you spend so much money acquiring customers, building data centers, building, getting talent, but then you can serve, let's say you spend $50 billion to build Google, right? And now every marginal search query basically costs you nothing. The marginal cost is zero. But what was happening with AI was actually the marginal cost wasn't zero. A marginal query on ChatGPT, as we've talked about, was about maybe 10 times more than a search query. It was a multiple orders of magnitude more.
Significantly, yeah.
So people were basically saying like the whole tech industry has been living off this, zero marginal cost structure. But AI was actually not that. And people were just like, this is why they're kind of skeptical that AI would be positive for businesses. And we talked about if Google went to an AI first search, that's actually kind of bad for their business because the cost for each of those queries is actually going up. But then, Bilal has mentioned it balances against the fact that you can maybe get better ads, right? Because if the way it's set up. But anyways, the whole point of that, and I'm getting ahead of myself again, is that Nvidia, that's the bull side of it. But the thing that Bilal and Jack, you guys had said, and I want to square the circle, is the reason this broke through them. Why was it that people have known about DeepSeek for over a year? Namely in the AI community, right? They've known about DeepSeek because these researchers, as they like to say, are quite cracked. I mean, you put 200 Chinese PhDs in a room, and we'll talk about DeepSeek. It's only Chinese. They only hire locally. They don't give a shit about Stanford, MIT, Harvard, or Berkeley. They wanted this to be a Chinese first company because the founder of DeepSeek is a billionaire hedge fund manager. That's the story anyway. Don't worry, we're gonna get the tinfoil hat thing on with like, is this some giant CCP op?
Chat GPT versus Chat CCP. That
exactly.
was the segment.
So and I'm happy to entertain the CCP op angle because I think there's credence to it. Namely, for example, that they dropped this DeepSeek dropped this reasoning model on the day of the inauguration. Like, there's a message being sent, in my opinion. But the reason I think it blew up was a confluence of events. Jack had kind of hinted of it. The dollar amount, right? So three things I think kind of really played into it. Nvidia, most valuable company in the world, on and off with Apple. It's been trading for the last month. Biggest tech stock story in the last 5 years, right? That's number one. Number two, China versus US. Geopolitics, new Cold War. We've talked about it here. TikTok ban, tariffs. All these are floating in the soup, the media soup, right? But one thing, America, in this kind of geopolitical battle, it was expected that the AI lead, which is people are calling like, this is the new technology, this new frontiers, a nuclear arms race. That's one framing of it. America has this 6 month to 1 year lead, if not longer, right? Especially because under Biden and earlier setup with Trump, they're slapping tariffs and export restrictions on chips, on other technologies to China. So there's that angle there. And then there's the whole part about, we talked about the business model of AI. Is this structure of AI, people, Satya Nadella saying, I'm good for 80 billion, right? And like Masayoshi's son coming out and being like, yo, $500 billion. We're going to build $500 billion worth of data centers. Zuck saying, I'm going to spend $65 billion on data centers. So these three things, Nvidia, the story, geopolitics, and then all this massive spend of AI and people think it's a bubble. This is like the convergence of all of it. I think that's what made it break through. Do you guys, how do you guys feel about that?
That makes sense. I guess the question underlying all of this is the trust in what's been shared, right? Like, so has it actually been 20, 30 times cheaper? I've seen different takes on that. And then also just, I'm not saying that can't be the case because maybe it is the case, but at the same time, we're kind of assuming that the smartest people here are working on it, though with inflated big company style investments. Are all of them missing something that, like, is Sundar, Zuck, OpenAI, Sam Altman, Elon Musk, the way they even invest in, in their approach, Microsoft, are all of them just missing something that someone else can do it 20, 30 times cheaper? Well,
let me ask Jack Butcher a famous quote about creativity. What does constraints do, Jack? What happens when you aren't allowed to use the best NVIDIA chips?
A black and white canvas, one might say.
Yeah, what do you do? What do you do in China?
Yeah, I mean, the rhetorical question, right? Like the idea that you have a certain amount of resources to work with. I think that, to Bilal's point before, the um, the debate I don't even think is about how cheap it is to use. Like the inference and the mechanics of the system as it exists now is undisputably cheaper. The debate is how much it costs them to train the model, right? And that subject is being avoided, or like the truth is obfuscated because there's some like legal things that they need to deny that they didn't have access to that amount of processing
Right.
power for whatever reason, right? That and in my mind, like the reason all of this a day later is, resolving itself naturally is because like these are like architectural changes that all of these other companies can make, right? And then the idea being that you don't need as much compute, or like the demand for this is finite, or there's like at a certain point we reach the peak amount of processing power we're required, is just historically untrue. And I don't think you can really make that argument either, right? It's just like everything is about trying to hit faster benchmarks, use less energy, like Moore's law, all of these like trends in technology. I don't know if there's a historic parallel for like a step function in how something like, a re-architecturing of a code base that has ramifications like this, but I still don't think it affects like Nvidia aren't saying, oh, let's make less chips, boys. Like, let's scale this back. I don't think that's, it just feels like this is a little different than something like, a car factory, or like something that has like physical consumption limits, because the product is this like meta idea that has kind of boundless applications. Like this is the like, remember like the metaverse pitch from a few years ago in COVID where I was like,
You mean when they literally changed their company to Meta?
Yeah,
but
you mean when
I think
Pepsi was responding on Twitter to people saying "Hello, friends"? We'll see
I
you
will
in the
say,
metaverse.
I will say, I think the Zuck play there was actually like 10D chess. Like, I don't think that was as much of a response to the moment in time versus like forward looking of like, they have such a massive network surface area, this thing that just reaches into every aspect of like non-physical life, shall we call it. It's like far better of a name than Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the same way, the Twitter X thing, like Meta became this vessel for like, oh, we could do anything, anything that.
It's actually a great word. It's it rolls off the tongue.
It's amazing. Yeah,
Meta.
and it got co-opted by like McKinsey types, kind of. I knew if I was still in the agency world, they would like the way that was getting slung around, man, to win like pointless contracts. Like pitching a chocolate brand on like a VR experience and shit. Like that's what would have been printing in 2021.
You can
for
see
these, like,
the chocolate in the metaverse.
Exactly.
Well, and it tastes the same. But actually, Jack, I want to pull back to the point that you and Bilal actually brought up. So Bilal was saying there's a controversy over the instigating, and you nailed the difference. The breakthroughs, it's by the scan of people that know they're talking about. The actual breakthroughs, which I'll try to explain in layman terms shortly, they are legit. But to Jack's point, and which Bilal had brought up, the thing that really caused Nvidia to potentially get nuked was they claimed that it costed them $6 million and I think 2,400 H800 chips. And what you need to know about H800 are those are the previous model of Nvidia chips prior to the export ban, export controls, right? So people were like, wait, wow, you were able to do this for 5 million? And this is the running joke. I mean, how many times did you guys see that that meme with Jin Yang from Silicon Valley? How many times did you guys see that one? I got it right here. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, it's all over the feed, that one.
I mean, it's all over the feed.
I think didn't the CEO was posting it.
No. So that was a parody account.
The fake account.
Oh, it was actually a parody account?
Yeah.
Are you sure? I thought I
it was.
onto
So here it
actual...
is. So here. So people, so this is for the listeners, this is a Liquidity, obviously legendary finance meme account. And he has a picture of Jimmy O Yang playing Jin Yang from Silicon Valley. He goes, OpenAI, huh? 500 billion? Give me 2 weeks at 5 million. I'll clone it ASAP. So the joke, that was like kind of the thing that really blew up that first day. The contrast between OpenAI, Masayoshi Son saying we need $500 billion to build up these data centers. And then DeepSeek claiming they did this training run to do the V3 model with 5.5 million. And the thing I would address directly is this. At this point, everyone is basically agreeing to call BS on the 5.5 million. But it's not really, they're not really looking directly at DeepSeek. It's just a misinterpretation across the board. DeepSeek just said that one training run for their newest model cost that. That doesn't account for the 200 PhDs that allegedly they're paying top dollar for in China. Apparently DeepSeek pays more for tech talent in China than any other company other than ByteDance. So you take 200 employees, and mind you, OpenAI has over 4,000 employees right now. So that was, right, they have 200, but top tier employees. Let's say they cost them $1 million a year. That's $200 million right there, right? And then they had, at a minimum, they had a cluster of 10,000 Nvidia chips of the older model. But other people are saying, and Elon even commented on this, but again, he has reasons, he's incentivized to say it. But Alexander Wang, the CEO of Scale AI, which is a large AI player on the data side, he went on CNBC at Davos and said, yeah, I believe it's well known that DeepSeek has at least 50,000 H100s, which are the banned chips. But again, that might be speculation. I think it might have also been a misreading of a very popular newsletter called Semi Analysis. And but the TLDR is this. Does DeepSeek have access to chips? And this is where CCP comes in. It's become quite well known that maybe Nvidia, they might be turning kind of a blind eye to, you know, shell companies in Singapore buying chips because they're allowed to do it. And then those chips magically finding their way into China, right? It's like China's the second biggest economy in the world. They have a lot of powerful people. They could probably figure, if they had to, how to get chips into the country. The same way they figured out how to get Russian oil in embargoed ships into their ports, right? So I would say that DeepSeek probably has access to a lot more than they're putting forth. But to answer specifically, and Jackie, you already mentioned it, the breakthroughs are very real. And it goes to what Bilal had asked. How were they able to do this? Bilal asked 10 minutes ago, why isn't Anthropic, why isn't XAI, Google, why did Meta make these breakthroughs? And it had to do because they largely didn't have these constraints. They were able to put up data centers with 100,000 GPUs. And I'll talk through specifically in very understandable ways, actually, what the breakthroughs were. But they are all consistent with the idea that these breakthroughs had to be made because you couldn't get your hands on all the chips you wanted. And the other thing I'll add before I pass to you guys, just any final thoughts wrapping up on that section before we talk about the chip, the algo improvements, was that this is a benefit to all customers we alluded to. It's also a massive benefit to all these labs now, exactly to Bilal's point. They get to take this is all written, published. They get to take this and apply it to their own businesses now. And so some people are basically saying it's like, okay, if this was a CCP op, this also might have been extremely poorly run because they just gave away the secret sauce. Like they gave away what they were forced to have discovered, right? Google and Apple and Meta and OpenAI may never have discovered these improvements because they were never forced to do it, and they just gave it away. So America now has these improvements, and they have access to the chips. So the export controls remain quite important. Some people are just like, yeah, well, it looks like the export controls don't work. But the DeepSeek CEO has literally said, our biggest bottleneck is access to chips still, right? They still want chips because they know they combine their improvements with these chips, it's going to be a big deal. So before jumping into any of the specifics around the improvements, do you guys have any wrapped up thoughts about, this idea that they've given away this kind of like manna from the heavens? Like, is that more of a, hey, this is actually a CCP op, or is that more like, oh, well, if this was a CCP op, they probably wouldn't have given it away? Or do they want to give it away to destroy the US business models? Thoughts?
Jack, any thoughts, mate?
I mean, the optimistic take, I think, is like,
so Jack,
open source.
Jack, you're away from the mic, so say that again. Oh, all right.
We'll
sorry.
have Rafa. Yeah.
Rafa just cut into this. Trung, repeat the question, sorry.
So, let's start again from here. So let me throw it to you guys quickly before we get into the details of the DeepSeek's like kind of algorithmic and architectural improvements, which we'll keep like very understandable. Bilal, do you find the idea that this is a CCP psyop, right, credible based on the fact that they gave everything away, right? They gave away all their learnings, which it will now improve the U.S. product. And the U.S. still has access to chips, which is now the U.S. advantage. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I would say, to try to think that through, I'd say if this wasn't coming from China and the same behavior, if this same thing emerged from, let's say, India or even somewhere else in the US, would we be saying the same sort of thing? Would we even consider that someone is trying to, gain access to certain things? Obviously, with China, it's a very specific thing because there's a kind of a longer term war happening in a way, like a battle for supremacy sort of thing between China and US. So based on what I've read, the short answer is, I don't necessarily think that it is. I think they actually seem like they're, I don't know, I don't want to use the phrase independently working because I don't know what that looks like in China, but
right.
I don't assume just because they're in China, it has to be a CCP thing. And now, but at the same time now, as Jack mentioned, as we started recording, we're seeing, I think Alibaba just released something. There's like 2-3 different ones that have been coming out of China as well. But that also might, I don't know if that's a coordinated thing or if it's just, now someone's launched something that other people are like, hey, we want to jump on this kind of attention bandwagon as well. So I'm not too sure. But yeah, what about Jack? Any thoughts on that or Trung even?
Jack?
Well, I'm not very articulate on this subject. I want to get more articulate, but the idea of like value created by open source software and like the contribution that open source software makes to the growth of all other things, like, is a pro-growth attitude, right? It's like put something out there that will enable people to build things faster, better, cheaper, things of that nature. Like, that is and has been true for a long time with a lot of the value in the Fortune 500 in technology stocks is built on top of like open source architecture, right? Like the stuff that gets customized on top of like Linux, Git, SQL, all of these like frameworks, databases,
email protocol, internet protocol.
Right. Yeah, and like I think there's also a thing to be said for like cultural supremacy, right? Like the idea that this all has to be a way to capture value privately. It is a great like PR move, honestly, for like a country that is perceived as being completely locked down technically, and we're never going to produce anything that gives you any agency to create anything or find out information. And there's obviously influence from there's geographic influence on what can and can't be asked in that thing too, right? So that is a
with the app itself specifically. So to just to address that nuance, you're right. Like the actual DeepSeek app, which hit the #1 in the App Store, you can jailbreak it. I've seen people actually, if you ask it in Vietnamese or Tiananmen Square, it'll tell you. If you do codes, it can do it. But you're right. you can't ask about Xi Jinping in the actual app. But to Jack's point,
And that's
the
true.
open source
That's true
part,
in that's true in all of in the American closed source models too, right? There's stuff it won't answer,
oh yeah,
or you
there's
have to
stuff you
like
won't ask.
really, really have to
But
like
to your
get
point,
it to.
right? No, I just want to say, Jack, the key was like you can actually just take the
model
it's
itself
on
and run
GitHub.
it locally. Yeah,
and run it locally, exactly. And you can ask whatever you want, right?
Which is incredible, and the like implications of that are just so profound too. Of like, I think I sent you guys a message. I forget the exact language that was used in it, but it's like you can walk around with like the sum total of human knowledge in your pocket and have this like oracle running local. It's like it's a crazy breakthrough, and like as a country, why wouldn't you want to take credit for that? You know, like the amount of like perception recalibrating that actually does is quite significant. Was it Bill Gurley that that tweeted? I think he maybe even had the open source, like plugged it from the perspective of it being net positive as an open source technology, and yeah, I think. I mean, the OpenAI stuff specifically is like. It does feel weird to me to be like, this is the only company that can and should win at this, you know, like it's kind of an odd perspective to have. And they do have like a savage head start into name recognition. Like what's their comparative advantage to Claude? It's insane, the difference. Like they have a couple 100 million users and Claude probably has 10% of that, 5% of that. And this thing did seem to like, even though there have been these like stories that come out around how Claude functions and like features that they're shipping, it's never gotten like into the public consciousness like this. You know, there's never been like challenging ChatGPT for position in the App Store, but this did. You know, another great thing, this is like kind of off topic, but somebody made a great point about the design decision to expose its line of thought. It's so novel and interesting to be able to watch it think. And like, I thought that from the beginning when they shipped that new model of OpenAI, when it gives you those like cringe little like 3-word summaries of like combobulating the information, whatever it says. It's like some like very abstract reference to what you asked, but doesn't tell you anything. And this is like a real like shift in your experience of the technology because you're actually watching it think in a different way than has been the case before. And it also, I sent you guys a tweet yesterday, I forget who said it, but it's like gives people something to do. When this thing is taking a minute to give you an answer, you have to give people something to do, whether it's read it, like it's thinking, play a like, remember the Chrome like dinosaur game? Like just give people something to do when they're waiting. And to output an answer at this level of reasoning, there will be a gap, at least for in the short term. And that also I think they picked up a lot of curiosity and users from just the voyeurism you experience when you watch it think like that. And I think that also weirdly as like a user pattern, I think that will help people improve how they use the technology too, because you see how it's like you have a sparring partner rather than it just spitting out an answer. It's like really teaching you how to prompt it better because you can see the train of logic it takes from what you ask.
No, that's a great point. You sent that tweet. It was somebody took the comment section of a TikTok and said, "Look how the normies are using this," and they're like, "Oh my god, it's so cute the way it's thinking."
Yeah,
so for the listeners that haven't seen OpenAI's version 01 versus the R1, OpenAI hides. It doesn't hide. It just says thinking, right? It's like to Jack's point.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you a game. It's like the ... thinking thing. And I love that Jack brought this up because this was actually another thing that clearly came out of this. Outside of the architecture improvements that other labs in the West will probably add, it's revealed preferences, right? People were like, wow, I love this. And OpenAI had initially not shown how to do that because, to Jack's point, well, not just, but the larger point was they didn't want to give away. I think OpenAI's reasoning was twofold. They're like, wow, if people see how this thing thinks, they might think this is because it's going to say some crazy shit, right? Like you're going to see, it's going to verbalize its thinking process. It's obviously not thinking like a human, but it'll say shit. You know, when stuff are coming through your head and you're thinking, how much stuff do we not say? Right? Like in this podcast, I probably had to like censor myself a million times already. That stuff all gets written out. It'll just look insane, right? But to Jack's point, it turns out it humanizes the product so much, right? And I think people will add this, show the reasoning process. And Jack, you also mentioned like it teaches you how to interact with it better.
Yeah, it's not a black box anymore. And that is really the meta distinction between these two things, right? It's like you have the second order and third order effects of this are so much bigger than something like OpenAI, just like training a black box and just trying to get more people to subscribe to the black box. This is a huge, like blows the doors off the possibilities, and like the way they released the paper, which again is beyond my technical reading comprehension, but the amount of transparency into like how it's constructed. And again, I'm speaking without being able to understand the depths of it. So there may be things that are omitted there, but it's more than you get from like OpenAI as a video, like, hey, go play with the new model.
Yeah. It's just like, you're right. It's just, the transparency is crazy, right? And Bill, you brought up Bill Gurley, and I'll just top this whole point before asking kind of Bilal his thoughts on that normie process. Was a lot of people are like, well, actually, even though this is a gift to the world, there are still parts of it which you have to look at from a very cynical national security standpoint. Is China getting chips that they're not supposed to be getting, right? Did they just steal a lot? I mean, a lot of it was built off of Llama, which is open source. So there's that end to it. But also, did they just gank OpenAI stuff? There's always this concern about spies, and one of the running jokes at the early part
cracks
of it.
me up every time you say
guys
it.
remember the Asian,
Yeah.
the Asian? Well, you guys sent me one of them. Is a Leo pointing at the screen when he looks at. It's about a OpenAI employee looks at the team page for DeepSeek and sees like his ex-girlfriend. And it's just like there's a running joke right now in San Francisco and in the AI community that if you talk to an Asian, girl, she's a CCP spy. Like it's a running joke, and I'll tell you right now. I know some people are like, oh man, that sounds racist. There's a 100% chance that this is happening. This is documented, by the way.
I will clarify for the people listening only that Trung is Asian, so he can make these jokes.
He can say no. I know. I'm saying it's like I could send dozens of articles right now of there has literally been a number of CCP female spies that honeypotted politicians, high corporate execs in America. And again, this is not just China. Every single nation state power is doing some form of this, right? We talked about it last week with spying on the social app. America is clearly doing this. Russia is clearly doing this. Like honeypotting is just spy 101, right? And what I'm saying is but the joke why this has so much credence in the San Francisco community is because one of the cliches amongst the tech community is a white dude married to an Asian girl, right? Just I don't have to tell you. You can find a dozen examples right now of leading tech executives that fit this relationship. I'm not going to say names.
Just in general, yeah.
Anyway, in general. Also, SF is like 30% Asian, right? So like this shouldn't be a shock. But the running joke of the Asian girlfriend CCP, it's all over Twitter. It's hysterical. People can be like, oh man, that's like, you're just putting people in the boxes. It's funny. I'm sorry. It's funny. These memes were hysterical. But I also saw something funny too. They're like, somebody's like, we're going to send the cheerleading squad from University of Arizona over to Beijing.
Trung, were you seeing when TikTok was banned for a few days and people were migrating to what was the other app called, the other Chinese app that something Red
Book.
Yeah, Red Note.
Red Book. And then there were a lot, again, I don't know if these are real or not, but the screenshots of the local people in China discovering the American
Oh,
you know,
well, we
type of
joked about
person.
last
So
week with
that
Wu
people
Wei, the
were-
parody account, the perverts.
Yeah, that there you go, exactly.
The sluts
and the
and
comments are
perverts.
just like, I've discovered foreign women or something like that. I've lost my taste or something for my
No,
native
dude,
or
you-
something like that.
Listen, man, you send the University of Arizona cheerleading squad to Beijing. I can tell you right now that they will be spilling secrets in. no, but the running
Spilling
joke, dude.
secrets.
No, but like Growing Daniel, one of the funniest
Oh,
Twitter
boy.
accounts. There's like somebody had posted a bunch of these pictures of an OpenAI party, and one of the pictures was literally of a very attractive Asian girl cornering, like if we're being honest, like an artist, and he just goes like the typical like San Francisco relationship, and it got like 50,000 likes. Like people, this is a fully established running joke, and but anyways, back to is this an op? Let's put a bow on that. We're like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Whatever.
What's your opinion on it? This the 30-second opinion on it, Trunk. Is this a psyop or not?
Well, you brought up, I was like, you don't want to say whether or not DeepSeek is holding hands with the CCP. So the DeepSeek's, let me get some background on the CEO. I haven't even told the story yet. So this dude is born in 1985. He's like literally our age, right? So I don't want to butcher his name, so I'll get it right here. I'll give the TLDR on his background. Liang Wenfeng, savage, right? So this dude is from as we talked about, from China. Oh man, this is hysterical. Every single mainstream media company, when they write about him, they're just taking a random photo of a guy named Liang Wenfeng. It's not him. It's hysterical. I'm literally looking at these things right now. And
That's ridiculous.
You want to talk about The Guardian? Get your shit together. This is not him. But here we go. So, okay, I'm going to read the note from FT article. DeepSeek founder Liang Wenfeng studies machine vision at Zhejiang University. It's one of the top universities in China. At 30 years old, and this is 10 years ago, launches a high flyer quant hedge fund. He makes a fortune. Now has about $10 billion of assets under management. Some people say he's a billionaire. In 2019, he decides he wants to build human-level AI. And he does this as a side hustle. His hedge fund already owns a bunch of Nvidia chips because they're using that for stock picking. So he already has employees at his hedge fund, which are really good at squeezing the juice out of Nvidia chips. He buys 10,000 H800 chips. This is the one pre-export controls in 2021. Starts bringing over his buddies from the hedge fund, his employees, to work on this side hustle. Again, this is the framing. A lot of people are skeptical of this framing. They're like, oh, wow, this sounds like a Silicon Valley success story. CCP Psyop. That's kind of like how it's thinking, right? Sounds like a movie. CCP Psyop. Like I'll give you the exact quote from the FT article. One of his business partners, again, I'm putting this in air quotes because I don't want to get charged as somebody who's just like taking CCP talking points here. When we first met Liang, he was this very nerdy guy with a terrible hairstyle talking about building a 10,000 chip cluster. We didn't believe his idea, and he had zero articulation of what the business model was. This was his business partners. So anyways, he starts bringing people over, paying top dollar. U.S. export controls, as we talked about, forced them to get creative. They say they were able to train these models at 1/30th the cost. They release it on the day of Trump's inauguration, the newest model. So people are thinking, again, op. 200 employees versus 4,000 OpenAI hits the top of the App Store. Any questions? You guys are hearing that before getting to the algo. Does that sound plausible to you? Or is that so convenient?
Well, why don't we try and distill and articulate what the advantage would be, or what the primary objective would be if this was orchestrated? Data capture?
Data capture.
Is that the idea?
Data capture, nuking America's AI industry.
But that's, I mean, I think that one is the one I have a problem with, or that I have like you could say anybody pursuing anything competitively is trying to nuke somebody else.
That's
Like
true.
they
Yeah.
are trying to
Fair.
survive
Yeah.
too, right? It's like,
Yeah.
this is an economic reality you're invested
Yeah,
in.
they're
It's like,
competing as well. Yeah.
guys, if you guys start expanding your energy grid, and it, like, interestingly enough, that is kind of power projection, isn't it, Trump? It's like these are like necessary. It's necessary to pursue these things, but they aren't necessarily direct acts of aggression, even if they are interpreted
right?
that way.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess I'm not saying it from the perspective of like it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's sort of like you're not able to isolate those things into like such defined objectives, right? It's like China is spending resources developing technologies that America is also developing. It's like
they're allowed to do that, right? Like that's his game.
Of course. Like and like of course, like when you're jostling to be a superpower and there's only really two legitimate contenders, people lose their shit about it. And it's like maybe even the term psyop, I'm like maybe we would all be better off if it was just like this open like the assumption is, yeah, we're trying to win. We're trying to decimate.
No, but the reason, well, hold on, Jack. Actually, you brought up a great point. You brought up the economic point. So the psyop thing specifically is dressing this story up as this eccentric billionaire who did this project on the side. Hey, we can do something at 100th of the capacity of America. Is that not a win from the standpoint of the rest of the world? From a standpoint of, oh, you think you can hold us down, David versus Goliath? Psychological victory.
Yeah.
Again, to your point though, is like
I think so, and I also think people doing stuff at that scale, like to imagine they're not bedfellows or involved at the governmental level is moronic too, right? It's like these things that have that level of reach and power and implication. It's like it's not the first conversation this guy's will have had with the government. He's running a $10 billion hedge fund. It's like it's like maybe the similar thing happening here with like the lobbying and the posturing around like, oh, we need to, AI safety and we need to do X, Y, and Z. And guess what? It just so happens to be like optimized to benefit my cap table. Those happen to be the things that are the safest in the world to do with AI. The people with the most capital making the rules about how this stuff should be developed to deliver the highest returns to their bag holders. That's the most ultimate moral framework for this.
Shareholder value.
I think so much of it is like passed through the headline or the Twitter algorithm or the whatever else. And it's like, yeah, it probably is true that Chinese government doesn't want to have shitter technology than the American government. Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, did they do some like, even the like export controls? I don't know. It just sounds some of it just sounds like so naive to me. It's like, yeah, obviously these people aren't just being like, oh, America said we can't do that. All right, then we won't. We're not allowed to use those computers. Okay. Like,
I love that Jack is nuking tinfoil hat Trung. Is this a psyop? It's like Trung.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
In the world.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's like the narrative is the one that people love, or it's like the one that's been like these words have basically been used to describe competition. Is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not that at all. I'm saying, yeah, you could call it that, but it is also just like an emergent property of being alive, It's like crypto adoption versus exit liquidity. Exactly, mate. Exactly. Yeah, it's like the cynic, the optimist. It's just like how you pass the information. And I think like because everybody else has different criteria for what that, it's like how orchestrated is this? It's kind of like every conspiracy theory, right? It's like the thing that I actually love this guy's take on it. It's like if you imagine the government as basically layers of the DMV, there's like 50 layers of the DMV, and you have to have all these sophisticated actors corresponding with one another. And like there are these things that obviously can be orchestrated in small groups of people, but so much of this stuff could just be explained by like market incentives. And it seems to be obvious to me that that's the case here. But again, I know jack shit about geopolitics, boys. This is just me LARPing on a pod. But that when I read all
that's
that,
the whole
I'm just
point
like,
of the pod. So
we should add that.
Yeah, and like
200 episodes now.
Congratulations!
200
episode today. We've been going strong.
Who's the guy that writes Pirate Wires? Mike Solana.
Yeah, incredible publication.
He had a great tweet on it too. Said, "Who cares? This is what's happening.
Yeah.
Just respond to it. Like, yeah, what are we gonna do?"
Okay. I like that. So I just wasted 55 minutes in the past 3 days talking about it.
Don't take it as that. I'm saying it's
no,
like
I'm not taking it personal. I think you guys are bringing up a great point though. It's like there's like people want to assign a narrative to it, but the whole point is this.
Right.
Okay, cool. Just take what they've done and let's go. We need to move on to what the next phase means. Because what are you gonna do? What are you gonna ask Xi Jinping? Hey man, that wasn't nice what you did. Like, why'd you Psyop us?
Yeah, just change the algorithms and then run it back through the 100 times more hardware, and then supposedly we'll be in a better position, right?
Can you stop doing the Psyop?
Is it more complicated than that? Yeah, exactly.
No, but okay, let me actually. So funny enough, Bilal, before we get to the winners and losers, let me just finally get to the teasing here of what we talked about. I'm gonna go through this very quickly. So Morgan Brown, I believe heads AI at Dropbox or works on AI at Dropbox. Super viral thread that he based off of an article. Did you guys ever read that super viral article? The short case for Nvidia. Nope. So just by Jeffrey Emanuel.
I saw it, but I didn't read it.
It's an hour-long read. 100% worth it. I'm gonna give a shout out to my friend Johnny who sent it to me like very early. He was very early on it, and I read it. But so that's Jeffrey Emanuel. Jeffrey or Jesse? I just want to make sure I didn't butcher this. Jeffrey Emanuel. Shout out to Jeffrey. This was doing numbers. Actually, you guys will appreciate this. He sent it. He published it on a website called YouTube Transcript Optimizer. Everybody's like, man, don't you have a Substack? He's doing it because he runs a product, which is exactly that, and he wants backlinks on SEO. Bilal, is that smart?
That's hilarious. Look at that.
Is that hilarious?
What a hustler. Love it.
All right, so
content marketing strategy right there, boys. Just on the ridiculous. Wait, what's the domain? YouTube
Transcript Optimizer. What's funny is this. What's funny is he could have probably gotten 10,000 Substack subs from this, but maybe the SEO dominance is worth it. The reputation.
Converting into a multiple there, though, Trung. Are they turning into paying monthly subs?
What is a multiple between SEO ranking and Substack subs, right? So let me read through this. This is a summary of Jeffrey's article. Highly recommend reading it. And Morgan Brown from Dropbox, shout out for this really, really good summary. So he basically describes the main innovations at DeepSeek. So I'll read through one of them. He goes, okay, DeepSeek rethought everything from the ground up. Traditional AI is like writing every number with 32 decimal places. DeepSeek was like, what if we just use 8 decimal places? Is that accurate enough? You just save 75% of your memory. That clicks, right? Right there.
There you go.
Memory. Because the top Nvidia chips, one of the benefits is you can store more memory. So right there, you're seeing how this constraint forced them to do this, okay? Then they have something called a multi-token system. Normal AI reads like a first grader. The cat sat. DeepSeek reads in whole phrases all at once. 2 times faster. It's only 90% is accurate. But again, you're saving the processing requirements because you have worse chips, right? So there's a common theme here. And then they have something called an expert system. Typical massive AI, these big models from the West, they try to know everything at once. And I love this framing. So the model, when you're asking Anthropic or OpenAI, it's like asking a person that's a doctor, lawyer, and engineer all at once. You're asking an uber genius, but you don't actually need an uber genius for all your queries. So when you're asking DeepSeek, it only uses 671 billion parameters. 37 billion parameters versus 2 trillion parameters. So 1%.
It's kind of amazing. Isn't it kind of fascinating that this is like happening now? I read somewhere that like all of these theories have been like in circulation. They're just the first to execute it a certain way.
Yes. No, you're right, Jack. Because these ideas sound so obvious, right? It's like, why are we using all this memory? Why are we asking the entire corpus of the history of mankind instead of just asking specifically? And it is to the point that we touched earlier. there was just no need to force this onto the system because you just had a data center with 100,000 GPUs. But now that you kind of mentioned, Jack, because these ideas were already floating, they probably would have eventually made it their way into the models, right? I think DeepSeek was just the first to force it all. But yeah, I'll cut that there, but we kind of touched on it. Use less memory, right? Process with maybe less accuracy but faster, and then don't require the entire corpus of the foundation model. Just hit up exactly what you need. But then all blended together in a nice little package. But to Jack's point, these did exist. So Jack is 100% correct on that. These existed. These threads of research had existed before. DeepSeek brought it all together. So pause on that before we hit winners and losers. I'd like you guys just nail any thoughts on that, if that made sense, of their advantages.
Well, I think just it goes back to one of the questions I asked earlier is, are all these, in summary, are all these smart people that we read about on the US side just missing something? And history will tell you that happens quite often, actually, right? Like how many times in the history of technology or anything really, everyone's doing something one way and it just becomes a norm, and then someone else says, actually, wait a minute, why are you doing it like that? Let's do it in this way. And so I actually think it could very well be the case that they just found a much more efficient way to do it. It seems like they are, like from everything we're reading, definitely are in many ways, but it's more about, it's the question of, is it actually going to yield a better product long term across the board? And obviously it might not be just them, like other people are now going to use it. Like you said, the US companies also can use the same methodology if they want as well. So yeah, overall as a consumer, we all win, right? Like overall, this is very, very good for us. And we're going to have a lot more acceleration of all of this. I think the question obviously comes down to, is this going to hit Nvidia hard, or is it because we just don't have that reliance on it? The existing players like OpenAI, have they just gone too far down one, avenue to come back, and do they have to just continue to protect that version of the story that, oh no, this is the only way to do it properly? And then do they truly have a moat is another big question I guess we can come to in a second around, like for my parents know what ChatGPT is. They don't know what DeepSeek is just yet. Right.
Just yet.
Just yet. Which is key.
This reminded me of actually was negative oil prices. I was going to tweet that the other day.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
the barrel,
you totally flip the mod, like
it's like, guys, you are in. Oh, you think oil has no value because people aren't using their cars for the next 2 days? Like you're idiots. And we're all in this bubble of why am I not buying oil at zero?
Yeah.
Oh, because
at minus as well.
Why aren't I getting paid to buy oil? Yeah. And it feels like a really good proxy for that, where it's we've had this short-term shock, markets as this psychological mechanism of everybody's totally panicked that nobody's ever going to run a query in an AI again, or we're never going to have to manufacture another GPU because the cost of all this stuff is going to, it's just not consistent with, I don't know if there's another parallel anywhere for that, right? And Nvidia being basically the only company in that position, no? Is that a fair thing to say? All
what do you mean
of
that position?
Where basically all this software and architecture is being designed around their hardware specifically.
Yeah, we were going to address that specifically around this kind of bull bear case as we wrap up towards the end, the last section. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Jack, we'll talk about it. Why?
The only parallels in my mind are the Intel to Apple chip thing, right? Where it's we're gonna build our own hardware to run our software more robustly, efficiently, custom, and that takes just a gargantuous amount of time, and it's only done on top of user behaviors that are so baked in that you're not taking a massive risk, right? There's 5 billion hardware devices that are running this stuff versus a few hundred companies competing at the high level of AI. So I don't know, it feels very emotional and reactionary, and the actual moat that Nvidia has in manufacturing hardware is still enormous.
It's massive. Well, Bilal, why don't we kick off the winners and losers section? Read through the bullet points on Ben Thompson's article. So here comes Bilal.
So Trung did a great summary here. I'm just going to share my screen because I think this is worth going through one by one. So the question is winners and losers for big tech. Can you guys see that? All right.
Beautiful. Hit it.
So yeah, Ben Thompson obviously wrote, as he always does, a great piece on this. So Trung, do you want to go, because you wrote this summary?
No, you
hit
it, bro. Read it.
So let's just go one by one, and I think we can maybe. In fact, what I do is, so we're not just looking at a screen, I will stop sharing and we can just talk it through. I'll share this in the chat, Jack, as well, if you want to have it open. So why don't we start with, I mean, this one doesn't have OpenAI. I guess we just discussed OpenAI. Do we want to just quickly say OpenAI quickly, given that it is?
Well, I'll say the just walk through the big tech. I'll pull up the OpenAI.
Let's say
stuff.
Microsoft, because it's closest to OpenAI as well. So for Microsoft, the summary is win as a need to spend less on data and centers, or on data centers, GPUs will go down, essentially, right?
Yeah, the
but
thrust
demand
is that,
will continue to grow.
Right. Ben Thompson's thrust is basically just like, what does this improvement mean? It means it's going to get commoditized intelligence, and that it's cheaper to do the inference on these, which we're kind of circling around. And then the big tech, so Microsoft, now they don't have to spend as much on data centers and GPUs.
And it also kind of adds to this thing about them kind of slowly tiptoeing away from OpenAI being their only big play. So this kind of helps them accelerate in one area. If, let's say, OpenAI is a loser in this case, which maybe we're skipping ahead here, they're not completely just reliant on that, because they still have their own versions of stuff going.
Yep, 100%.
All right,
next
Amazon.
one.
Should we go Amazon? Big winner because it hasn't been able to make its own AI model just yet. But now will be very high quality ones available at very low cost. They get served through AWS.
Exactly. So similar to thing. Microsoft, right?
And
similar
Apple to a certain extent too, right?
Well, read the Apple one, because that's super interesting.
Apple says dramatically decreased memory requirements for inference, makes edge inference much more viable, and Apple has the best hardware for that.
To that point, Apple's up 5% in the last 2 days. So I saw a hilarious tweet yesterday, though. It went, so as Nvidia went down 15, 20%, Apple was up 3%. And people were like, Siri and Apple Intelligence are such shit that when the rest of the market's selling off, was selling off because of AI.
Trung, can we go into that a little bit more? Is it not? Yeah. My take on that was just because they're kind of late to the game, but maybe being late like a fast follower in the grand scheme of AI, this is still very early.
Which is
for them to be
Apple.
a fast, that is, they weren't the first smartphone, they weren't the first MP3 player, they weren't the first tablet, but they ended up making the one that was most popular. So in a way, that makes a lot of sense. If we are still in the first or second inning of all of this, this is maybe a smart thing. And also, a lot of this is based on this. They will be able to run this locally, right? Like the whole model can run locally. At
exactly,
this
like Ben
size.
Thompson wrote, the hardware, because the big concern with Apple was their AI sucks. It's not good. And they might have to partner with ChatGPT, which means they have to do rev share. DeepSeek just gave them. DeepSeek just gave Apple the kit and caboodle. They gave it to them. Right now,
it feels a bit like when
Apple.
Android came out, and then Samsung and all these guys basically just created super like high-end smartphones, and obviously the low end as well. But they were basically, getting that for free, except, there was obviously the search stuff that comes along with that. But I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, Apple usually create their own stuff. So it will be interesting to see if they just take all of that and repackage it.
They're winning. It's crazy because they already had the best chips. And now they get to combine it with all these efficiency gains. All right, let's keep walking through it.
All right, so we got Meta, biggest winner because it has the most consumer touch points for AI and can serve all users even cheaper.
Yeah, that was Ben Thompson's point for a long time, that the AI is a total cost center for Meta. So the question is, Meta could just ostensibly take DeepSeek and like drop Meta AI, but also Zuck wants to own the future of AI for himself, not be beholden to anyone. That's his Apple battle. So they're just going to take the learnings from DeepSeek and have cheaper inputs. And then these next 2 points are interesting. So why don't you rip through those? Google and Nvidia.
So we got Google probably worse off because specialized TPU hardware, less valuable and cheaper inference increases likelihood for more AI alternatives to search. Yeah, that's
interesting, right?
Yeah, especially because if it's easier to create something that is going to compete with search, then of course that is going to impact them. At the same time, I wonder if Gemini for them gains a lot from this too, no? The same way that other ones do?
Well, you're right. And they also go ahead, Jack.
I was just going to ask before you go to the next point, has there been like a noticeable impact on Google search since the like popularization of any of this stuff?
Yes, they've dropped below 90% for the first time.
It's dog shit.
Yeah.
It's such a terrible product. Like I tried this morning, I was ringing Amex and I go on there, I was like, Amex travel phone number. No, I ring it. I would literally say Amex travel phone number, press search. It has a big box at the top. Here's the 1-800 number. I click the box and it's someone who's paid to be up the list from Amex. And I'm like waiting on there. There's this disclaimer says like, oh, Google reserves the right to record your call for marketing purposes.
What?
I look at the phone again. I'm like, I'm not even ringing Amex here. Honestly, go and like try and accomplish anything.
Wait. When you said Amex phone number,
I'm not trying to fudge your bags here.
No, I'm curious if it was.
Amex
I'm
travel,
seeing if it's the
Amex,
same number on their site. I wonder if it's like Amex has got.
No, Bilal, put Amex travel
well.
phone number.
1244.
You're not listening. You
Sorry, go on.
Me.
No, go on.
I said Amex travel. It was.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, I mean that is.
It comes up with some
more than that
aggregator
example.
site.
It's just the ads, man. There's so many ads. It's a lot.
Well, I guess that is like, I don't care about ads. I'm saying what pisses me off is like the primary function of your product, you are obfuscating in the first thing you serve me. Yeah. Which is like an insane product decision. Who has done that? And like people who, anyway, I'm fresh off being pissed off about it, boys. So sorry for the energy.
Amex phone tobacco. But no, I do agree. And I mean, they're definitely, just looking at my own life, like I definitely go to ChatGPT, Claude, and all that. Honestly, way more than Google search. I use Google search when I'm on the. For a lot of searches, yeah. But I'm trying to think commercial searches, not necessarily. But like what I guess it depends what you count. For example, like travel. Would you guys do if you're going on a trip? I'm 100% using the AI models for like research of like I'm thinking of going to a place like this. Whatever, at this time of year. Yeah. It's just way more helpful. To be fair, I basically open up ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude all at the same time, and I just put the same thing in all of them, and I'm basically just seeing what the output is for all of them. So that's the point is if Gemini can actually be successful, which it seems to be working pretty well. It finished off as the, even on Polymarket, when you go on there, the lead-in models, they basically won out at the end of the year. At the moment, it seems to be the most popular, not popular is the wrong word, but the one that is working for different criteria. If you're looking at coding, research, like all the different things, the way they grade it, they're doing a good job. Like it's actually working really well. So that's the question is if they can continue to improve on that side. And right now they've got the search snippets, they've got the AI snippets on the search page. So that, they obviously have lots of people already using that. So yeah, I definitely think the traditional search model is definitely being eaten into, right? Because we just can see the way we're using it.
And their brand is incredible, so they got a lot of goodwill. It's like you could fuck this up for like 10 years and still win.
Yeah.
Like the Google verb is like undefeated. Yeah,
exactly. I will say also with the integration with phones, because like you just mentioned that Trung there with Siri being so bad. Have you ever? I still use an iPhone, but in Europe, it's way crazy. Bigger to just not like the iPhone thing. There isn't as big a deal. Like lots of people have high-end Androids. If people like us would consider that. Whereas here, it's just not really a thing as well. And the integration of Gemini on that is really good. Comparing that to like Siri, it's a completely night and day.
Gemini Pixel phone.
Yeah, they're very. Okay.
Well, people have been attributing the birth rate collapse to the green message bubble.
That's
Okay.
ridiculous.
No. Bro, this is more tinfoil hat than China CCP girlfriends, man. No, I'm joking, man. I've seen this. It's hysterical, eh? Wait, actually, Jack, I want to make sure I've seen the same thing you've seen. What was the one that you saw?
I can't even remember where I saw it, but it was like if you get a green message back to a blue message,
it's over.
The relationship
There's
ends
no match.
there. Yeah,
No match.
exactly.
All right, should we do the next
That's
one?
Apple's real moat, is that? Oh yeah, continue.
All right, Nvidia.
I'll talk to through Nvidia. I'll talk to this one.
CUDA, that's the programming language or
that's the software, yeah.
Right? Software, and then networking.
Multiple
GPUs are challenged. Companies aren't going anywhere. However, Nvidia is suddenly facing a lot more uncertainty. Gone.
Yeah, I'll talk to the two moats that Ben Thompson directly addresses. And Jack had asked, why is it that Nvidia has such a lead on this? And the second biggest manufacturer of chips, ostensibly, that should have been competing with them is AMD. I guess Broadcom's actually a much bigger company, but AMD for a long time was doing GPUs also. And people are like, why? Well, what's going on? What was this split between AMD and Nvidia? Bilal had touched on two of the moats. The CUDA programming language. So basically, there's 4 million developers in the world that work with CUDA, which is the programming language for NVIDIA chips. That's a massive base of developers. The network effect of that is massive. AMD does not have that. And AMD people have been trying to build software. I think they acquired a software company last year. It's just NVIDIA's 15 years ahead of them on this. And then 5 years ago, NVIDIA acquired an Israeli company called Mellanox. And Mellanox did networking for GPU chips. So if you own 10,000 NVIDIA chips, they work a lot better if they're put together properly. And Jensen calls the data center the new unit of compute. That's his pitch to basically just make people buy his bags. So he's like, listen, don't buy one chip, buy 10,000 of them. We'll network them for you. So those were the two main advantages of NVIDIA. Their two biggest moats. So DeepSeek has cracked that moat a bit because now people can be like, well, is networking as important if you don't need 10,000 chips, right? We get that, right? It's like, what if you only need 500 NVIDIA chips? So not only does NVIDIA get hurt because they need less chips, they don't need the networking requirements to put them all together. Because if you have 10,000 or 100,000 chips, you want to make sure they're all talking to each other, moving quickly. And that is an advantage for NVIDIA. If that goes away, their moat goes away or it gets punctured. Software language, DeepSeek has shown how to use older NVIDIA chips. And you don't need these massive and they're giving you how to use it. So the CUDA language, that actually sounds like it would help them. But the argument against that is actually you can do these improvements, these algorithmic and architecture improvements that we talked about with AMD chips. I think that was kind of part of it, the negative side. But I'll finish with this to say that the three big tailwinds for NVIDIA remains Jevons paradox, as we talked about. More
but isn't
AI usage.
That's been true before this, right?
Yeah, right.
NVIDIA is dependent on the AI as a sector, industry, whatever, being applied at many multiples of its usage than today.
No, that's why Buko Capital, who we've referenced here in the pod before, had a hilarious tweet. He's like, my entire timeline is people talking about Jevons paradox, and it's basically saying this has been the case the entire time. Exactly like Jackson, right?
This is literally, it's like you could put like the Wikipedia page of an amoeba up. It's the same idea.
You can put a Wikipedia page of an amoeba. So let me finish the last two tailwinds. The DeepSeek methods could be positive for NVIDIA's newer chips, right? It's like, just take whatever you're doing, buy more chips. just keep doing it, right? And then this is the last one, which is very interesting. The reasoning models. It's expensive. O1 is $200 a month, right? The OpenAI reasoning. But a reasoning model uses a lot of compute. Let's go back to Andre Karpathy, who, I'll say one joke that Martin Shkreli had. Hilarious joke. Martin Shkreli you guys sent it, right? Martin Shkreli retweeted Andre Karpathy, the former Tesla OpenAI co-founder, the thing he wrote a month ago about DeepSeek. And Martin Shkreli just writes, it took Wall Street a month to read this tweet, and then, which is basically saying, "Hey, listen, we're gonna have massive cost savings here," and then the positive, which people trying to weigh, is like, well, Nvidia, which by the time of this recording, which is now 11:30 p.m. PT, they're up 7% today, so they just added a 200 billion back to their market cap. So reasoning takes a lot of compute. So Nvidia, everything shakes out. They're fine. Like, Nvidia is dead. Oh my God, Nvidia is dead. No, they're not.
No, I'm thinking they're dead.
anyways.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah, well, that was one of my favorite tweets.
Negative oil prices, boys.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. Well, this one, Trung, I think one of us shared this in the group chat. Ironic that we got free AI from a hedge fund and $200 a month AI from a non-profit.
Can you read out the name of the... read that.
Vichao.
That is great.
Dude, you got to show
that's
it.
really
That's
good.
a 10 out of 10 tweet, man.
Wait, that's 1.6
really
million.
good.
Let's share that on the screen. 1 second.
Yeah. Dude, shout out. So let's do this. Let's wrap up with the other meme of the week. That was one of them. Jack, do you have one?
Here we go. Ironic, we got free AI from a hedge fund and 200
Numbers
from non-profit.
Yo,
that is very, very good.
Travis Kling, who wrote about, he had the first comment. This is going to get some likes. Let me end with this. This will be my last thing to round this out. People, this is a great episode. I had so much fun today. But this one to round it out. If you have one, pull it up.
I got one. Yeah, I got one.
This one fucking slayed me.
That is great.
So for the listeners...
Incredible.
Horrible, but great.
This one's amazing. For the listeners, I know the vast majority of you listening, it's a tweet from Untitled 01 PYNB. Like, just look at it, you'll find it. It's one of the Super Chad photos. It's Sam Altman in Super Chad mode.
Bogdanov, brother.
Bogdanov, bro, on the phone. And it just says, launch the porn Soro. And basically what it means is the Soro is the video model for OpenAI. And it's a nuclear option. If OpenAI wants to win mindshare and win the AI race, just launch the video generator, which is fully porn capable. Hysterical. Anyways, Jack, launch yours and we can wrap this up. What an episode,
I'll go out on
boys.
this one.
Oh, what an ep,
Go out on
boys.
this one, boys. Whoops. Oh, you get it?
Yeah.
I said as well. Very good. God, Jack, you got to describe this in the only way you describe.
What's the guy's name? What's the guy's name? Mike. He's like a competitive bodybuilder. He's like so much meme material on this guy.
Is
but
that
anyway,
Mike Thurston or something? Is that the guy?
Yeah, Mike Thurston. Yeah, so he's standing at he's at a standing desk using a computer, and the caption says, "Okay, Claude, please use DeepSeek R1 to build me $1 billion SaaS. Make no mistakes."
Make no mistake.
Make no mistakes is great. That's hilarious.
Incredible,
guys,
man.
You know what?
Incredible.
I can't even get. So my email this upcoming weekend is just going to be. It's about going to be 100 memes. The quality of memes, unbelievable. But
Last
guys,
few
what
weeks
an app.
especially been very, very good.
We'll get back to
Everybody's got all their work automated, so they can just spend their time making jokes, boys. This is the new economy.
There we go. Great
Quality
great
of memes
episode.
is up
Congrats
only.
on 200 episode, boys.
Yeah.
To 200 more. We'll see you guys next week.
Oh my God, guys!
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.